Yes, good evening all, online students as well as offline students who are sitting over here. So, today we are going to discuss about test 7 discussion class. Test 7 discussion class, mainly paper 2 unit number 7, 8, 9. So, this discussion class we are going to have complete understanding of tribal India questions. So, we are going to have on test 7 paper 2 unit 7, 8, 9 and today morning you have the test on test 8 paper 1 unit 1. So, the first question is about discuss the social disabilities, means problems, social problems suffered by scheduled caste. So, question is exclusively about scheduled caste and critically evaluate the constitutional provisions for safeguarding the interests of scheduled caste in India. For scheduled caste in India. So, you have to mention about this is 20 marker question. So, how you have to write the answer is first scheduled caste definition. Who gave the term called as scheduled caste? Why? Because Harijan was the name given by the Mahatma Gandhi. Exterior caste and Protestant Hindus was the term given by Ambedkar. Then scheduled caste for the first time used in Simon Commission, then it got institutionalized by the Government of India Act of 1935. Like this you need to mention about the scheduled caste. Then after the scheduled caste you should write about some factual information about the percentage of population which is present in India. So, 15% of population in India is scheduled caste, means a very good number of population is scheduled caste, but who are subjected to historical disadvantage. Then you will mention about the social disabilities like untouchability, discrimination, not allowed into public places, there is social disability, economical disability, political disability, these all problems of SCs you will be mentioning. The poverty level is very low, the education levels is very low, the poverty levels are very high, the education levels is very low, the health related problems are very high, these all problems you will be mentioning. But the question is about critically evaluate the constitutional provisions for safeguarding the interest of scheduled caste in India. Then what you have to mention? Then you have to mention about the constitutional provisions like developmental provisions for scheduled caste, protective measures for scheduled caste, welfare measures for scheduled caste. Constitutional articles are there, no? Those articles, those provisions you have to mention. So, these are the developmental provisions like providing reservations under article 16, no discrimination under 15, right to equality under 14, protection, abolition of untouchability under article 17. These all things you have to mention with respect to developmental provisions and protective measures. But the question is critically evaluate. The question is about critically evaluate. So, you have to mention that the constitutional provisions are sufficient up to some extent, but they are insufficient. Why? Because today also we are seeing some of the case studies like suicide of Dalit in Central University of Hyderabad in an alleged case of discrimination in 2016, Aryalur gang rape which became a national issue, stone pelting at Bhima Goregaon in 2016, Hathras incident, Unnao tragedy, Badawan incident, Sunduru massacre of Tenali of Andhra Pradesh, these many examples are there. So, from this case studies I am telling you that this particular constitutional provisions are insufficient. So, hence we need to have more broader constitutional provisions or legislative provisions like SC/ST Prevention of Atrocity Act. More stringent actions need to be taken if there is any atrocity or discrimination committed against this communities. That should be your answer. Why? Because the question is, the key word here is critically evaluate. So, your focus should be on critically evaluate, number 1. And number 2, this is second question. The second question is about critically substantiate the nature of social change among the tribes during colonial and post-independence era. Nirmal Kumar Bose had explained about the social change which is happening among the tribe in 3 contexts: pre-colonial, colonial, post-colonial, means before British, at British, after British, pre-colonial, colonial and post-colonial. So, he divided the social change among the tribes into 3 contexts, one is pre-colonial, colonial and post-colonial. However, the question is about the colonial and post-colonial. One paragraph you will write that in pre-colonial times, the tribes were being isolated, the tribes were being untouched, the tribes were being staying away, so because of this isolationism, followed in pre-colonial times, the tribes were untouched. The tribes were been living isolatedly. So because of no contact, because of no direct contact, the discrimination levied against the tribes is very less. So there is no social change. The contact is less. So social change is very less. Number one. But the social change happened in the tribes in colonial times as well as in post-colonial times. In colonial times and in post-colonial times, because of the contact with the mainstream, on the name of industrialization, on the name of urbanization, on the name of mining, on the name of deforestation, the contact between the tribes and the people has been increased. So there is a complete social change we observed among the tribal communities. So the question is about substantiate examples you have to write. Positive example, negative example, positive example, negative example. How negatively their life got impacted? For example, Santhal tribal community was being thrown out of their area because of the deforestation which started in central India. Negative impact. Positive impact in northeast India, because of this colonial time, the missionary activities increased, because of which the education levels and health conditions has been improved. So positives and negatives. Social change, don't not only write about negatives, write also about positives in post-independence as well as pre-independence. This should be the points which you have to bother about and you have to write about with examples. A proper model answers I provided you. In that model answers, point wise, clearly, very clearly I mentioned it. If you read that, that is enough and more. And the third question is about impact of democratic institutions on tribal life and give insight into the constitutional provisions for their safeguard. So 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1992 was been not applied into the scheduled areas where the tribals will be living in the mainstream of Schedule 5, and it is not applied into the Schedule 6, which is called as tribal areas of Northeast India. But in 1996 we made PESA Act, which is called as Panchayati Raj Extension to Schedule Areas Act of 1996. This PESA Act had applied this Panchayati Raj institutions or modern democratic institutions or PRIs, Panchayati Raj institutions, into the Schedule 5 areas and Schedule 6 areas, because of which the traditional panchayat which were been there, the traditional panchayat which were been there in tribal societies got impacted. The question is about that. So the impact is, number one, some tribal communities accepted the challenge and they went for elections. There is demarcation of functions like welfare activities and developmental activities were being taken care by statutory panchayats and regulatory functions were being taken by traditional panchayats. Sometimes competition, huge fight happened between the traditional panchayat as well as statutory panchayat leaders, and sometimes the traditional panchayat leader did not accept it. They thrown out who are the people who want to contest elections in tribal areas. And sometimes how you can apply top to down approach, we don't want to stay in India, we want to come out. So the impact or the response is multimodal. The response is multidimensional because of the impact of modern democratic institutions on this. The question is about give insight into the constitutional provisions of their safeguards. Then you have to mention about PESA Act. Then you have to mention about Forest Rights Act also. Why? Because if we want to declare any person's rights on the forest, compulsory Grama Sabha need to be constituted. So this is what you have to mention. The next question is, write the meaning of isolationism. Isolationism, assimilationism. What is isolationism and assimilationism? Here you have to remember about Verrier Elwin. Verrier Elwin is the first person who believed the tribes should be isolated. If they come into contact with the mainstream, their lives will become more vulnerable. So he is the first person who advocated for isolationism, but later because of the influence of Jawaharlal Nehru, he changed his stand from isolationism to integrationalism. In between, G.S. Gurye, Indologist, had discussed about assimilationism and told that you tribes, you have to change your culture, you have to change your way of living. You tribes, you have to change your way of living, you have to change your way of customs, practices, and you have to come in, convert into the mainstream. You have to change your religion, you have to become one among the mainstream. That is called as assimilationism. So the two concepts you have to mention here, what is isolationism, what is assimilationism, and critically evaluate the debate between the context of isolation and assimilation debate on tribal population. So whether we have to follow isolationism, whether we have to follow assimilationism. So we should not follow isolationism and assimilationism. The best of the best we can do is integrationalism, but however we should not forget that. If the tribes are vulnerable, like centralist tribal communities, we have to have the approach of isolationism, with which we have an approach called as eyes on, hands off, which is called as hands on, hands off, eyes on approach. Eyes on, we have to look them, centralists who are isolated, but our eyes should be on, but our hands should be off. So we should not go there, but we have to look there, how they are living, any epidemic or endemic is there in that particular tribal community, we should look into them. So isolationism need to be maintained for primitive tribal groups who might impacted if they come into contact with the mainstream. If not, they should follow integrationalism. So here you have to write the debate between the Verrier and Gurrier. Here you have to write about the debate between the Verrier-Elwin and Gurrier. Then the next question is, write a brief note on historical process of social exclusion of denotified tribes and highlight their present status with suitable examples. See, in 1871, Criminal Tribes Act, which is called a CTA, Criminal Tribes Act of 1871 came into existence and identified some tribal communities as criminal communities or denotified communities, identified some communities as criminal communities and denotified communities, and they believed that the crime is a biological concept, the crime is a genetical concept, the crime is a biological concept, the crime is a genetical concept. And in 1911, more number of tribal communities were being added to these criminal tribes. Their life became more vulnerable because they were being confined to limited area. They were being made report to the police for every instance. Gross discrimination were being levied on them. But after independence in 1952, we repealed the Criminal Tribes Act and we came up with the Habitual Offenders Act of 1952, whereby we changed the name and we gave the name called as Denotified Nomadic and Semi-Nomadic Tribes. This is the history of the criminal tribes, who are now called as denotified tribes. They are not notified under SC, ST, OBC. So they are not recognized by the government into any category. That is the worst stage of discrimination for any community. Why? Because they are being unrecognized. That is a big problem. For example, according to Zaxa Virginius committee, there is a community called as Paudi Buyan who are not being identified as any community, but they are being earlier called as criminal tribes. So because of which they will not have Aadhaar card, voter card, they will not have ration card, they will not get any benefits from the government. These are all points you have to mention. And what are the steps taken by B.R. Ambedkar pre-metric and post-metric scholarships for denotified tribes, Nanaji Deshmukh scheme of construction of hostels for denotified tribes, boys and girls. From year 2017-18, the scheme assistance to voluntary organizations working for the welfare of OBCs have been extended for denotified tribes and economically backward classes. A central sector scheme of assistance for skill development of backward classes, denotified, nomadic and semi-nomadic tribes. So these are the new schemes which came for the development of denotified tribes. In 2014, National Commission for Denotified, Nomadic and Semi-Nomadic Commission was been constituted to identify the denotified tribal communities across India. But there are some denotified tribal communities like NAT, not denotified community of Haryana, because they were being branded as criminal tribe, they are not getting any job, their women were being thrown into prostitution and the men were being thrown into bonded labor. So they are living at the least stage of development in the mainstream society. So the provisions which are there are insufficient. We need to have more provisions for the development of this denotified tribal communities. So it should go in a structured way. First, who are criminal tribes? I told you introduction. Then what are the problems of denotified tribal communities? Then I told example. Then I told Zaxa Virginius committee recommendations. Then government schemes and conclusion. The content should be properly arranged. The next question is, write a note on process of religious conversions in tribal India. religious conversions in tribal India by using ethnographic examples. By ethnographic examples, you know that in India, the central Indian tribes impacted by Hinduism, northeastern tribes got impacted by Christianity. This is impacted by Hinduism, this is impacted by Christianity. So, because of this conversions, because of this impact, what are all the transformation which we are seeing? Nirmal Kumar Bose in his paper on the Hindus' method of tribal absorption described the process of conversion in that take place in a gradual steps, one by one. Means tribal people of central India are gradually they are shifting into Hinduism, step after step, step after step. In the first step, it is the extension of position in the caste hierarchy of Hinduism and providing occupational security to the hierarchy of Hinduism and provide occupational security to them first. They joined into the hierarchy of the caste tribes and there is occupational security. So, you are a tribe, you do agriculture, occupational security. So, they felt happy. So, they got some occupational security, their livelihood is guaranteed. The first step is they were being joined into the caste hierarchy, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra parallel with tribe. Then they were being given with occupation, that occupation is called as occupational security. Only a few specialized processes were performed with the Brahmins. Sri Shankara Deva in 16th century brought almost the whole of Assam into Hinduism, taught it like Ahoms. So, there is the tribal communities of Assam were being blatantly converted into Hinduism, like Shankara Deva or Shankaracharya, they converted the tribals into Assam. The Assam tribals were being converted into Hinduism. That is the reason we call Assams as Ahoms also. This is one example of Nirmal Kumar Bose. Another example is of Christianity. Northeast India the Northeast India is dominated by the Christian missionaries under the British India. Active support from them. Its process included the first extension of social services. First they told they provided health, they provided education. First they provided health, next they provided education. Then after that they started converting into Christianity. The first step was into health and education and the second step was into conversions. K.N. Sahai identified that one important part of education is to change the self-image and create a feeling of superiority. Then allurements are used to convert and become Western and modern with serving a tied to the past. Kasis who converted to Christianity feel superior to other castes. Similar techniques are used in the Chota Nagpur region for conversion. So, what they did, the tribals who converted to Christianity, they made them to believe like superiors. We are English education, they are westernized. So, what happened, when they felt like superior, the tribes who didn't converted to Christianity, they also got motivated that if I also convert into Christianity, my status also will. Who studied this? It is studied by K.N. Sahai. Islam also. Why the Islam could not influence the tribal people? Because absence of patronage. Absence of patronage. No official or crown patronage was extended to convert the tribals. The conversions to Islam are either done by Sufisans or by marriage. Navati of Konkan by marriage between Konkan women and the Arab Muslims. Similarly, Mopla Muslims and the tribals from Lakshadweep, some of the tribal communities of the Konkan region and some of the tribal communities of Lakshadweep were being converted into Islam, like Moplas. So, these are some of the tribal conversions. And the Buddhism is also similar to Hinduism. But the conversions into Buddhism is very, very less. It is limited to Lepchas, Sherpas of North India. These examples with these studies you have to mention in your answer. Next question. Critically elaborate on the given statement. 5th schedule and 6th schedule of the constitution are built on the foundationals laid by the colonial government. First, make a table like this. Now it is called as 5th schedule. Now it is called as 5th schedule, but earlier it is called as backward tract area. According to Government of India Act of 1919, the 5th schedule was been called as backward tract, and the 6th schedule earlier called as partially excluded areas, according to Government of India Act of 1919, then wholly excluded areas according to Government of India Act of 1935, now they changed as 6th schedule of the Constitution. So this 5th schedule and 6th schedule is not present in the Constitution. It is present in the Constitution because it is already present in the British Indian governance. It is present in the Government of India Act by the name called as backward tract. It is already present in the Government of India Act of 1919 as well as 1935. Earlier it called as partially excluded, then it is called as wholly excluded, then it is called as tribal area, Schedule 6, then it is called as schedule area, Schedule 5. This you have to mention. Then you have to mention about the provisions of Schedule 5, then the role of governor in Schedule 5, then the provisions of Schedule 6, then the role of governor in Schedule 6, the states which are part of Schedule 5, 10 states are there. How to remember Schedule 5 states? I will tell you. Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, once upon a time one state. Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, once upon a time one state. Maharashtra, Gujarat, once upon a time one state. 6. And 2 tribal states, Jharkhand and Odisha. And the 2 states which we have to remember, Rajasthan and Himachal Pradesh. These are the 10 states of Schedule 5 areas. And Schedule 6 areas are AMTM, Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram. That you have to mention about. But critically elaborate on the given statement, 5th there. But however, the provisions of this are insufficient. We made more powerful 5th schedule and 6th schedule, that you have to mention. What do you mean by the communalism? The conflict between 2 communities based upon the criteria. The criteria can be a religion, region, language, caste, etc. is called as communalism. But in Indian context, communalism is equated with conflict because of the religion is called as communalism. What do you mean by communalism? And critically evaluates its relevance for the multi-religious and multi-ethnic polity of India with the suitable or recent. Communalism, easy. What are the factors? Pre-independence factors, means British factors, partition of India, division of Bengal partition, separate electorate for Muslims, 1909 Government of India Act, All India Muslim League, Hindu Dharma Sabha, pre-independence. Post-independence, what are the post-independence? Hindu Dharma Sabha became very powerful and All India Muslim League also became powerful. There are some examples like Muzaffarnagar riots or Babri Masjid issue or Mumbai riots or recent Delhi riots. These all you can mention for this answer. Write a short notes on the problems of OBC, other backward classes, and the constitutional provisions given for them to protection. Direct question. There is no definition given for other backward classes. K. Subba Rao, former CJ of India, gave the definition, who are ascertainable and identifiable community because of their 2 backwardness: socially backward, educationally backward. Socially backward, educationally backward, as well as economically backward. These 3 communities who are socially, educationally and economically backward communities were being identified as other backward classes according to K. Subba Rao. Then what are their problems? They are backward, they are facing all the problems what Dalit face except untouchability. And the constitutional provisions also you have to mention here. The constitutional provisions till NCBC, now it became Constitutional Amendment Act till date. 102 Constitutional Amendment Act had made National Commission for BC statutory body as a National Commission for BC constitutional body. Earlier NCBC statutory body is having the power to declare any community as OBC, but now NCBC having no power to determine any community as OBC. It is the parliament which is having the power to determine any community as NCBC or any community as OBC. Take the example of Marathas of Maharashtra, take the examples of Jats of Rajasthan, take the examples of Kapus of Andhra Pradesh, take the examples of Patedars of Gujarat who are asking for OBC category, who are demanding for OBC category. That is the contemporary relevance of OBC topic. And one more topic you should add. What? OBC subcategorization. Sujata Mehta committee, former Supreme Court judge, one committee was being constituted for the sake of subcategorization of OBCs into OBC A, OBC B, OBC C, OBC D also you have to mention. Write the meanings of tribe and nation state and compare the tribes in India with the indigenous people elsewhere in the world. Simple. Tribe. Tribes are those who live isolated, who feel shy to contact with the mainstream, who give higher importance for the culture and kinship ties. For them, the culture is important but not the economy. They give importance for non-material aspects but not for material aspects. And who have an in-depth association with the land and the territory they live in. And they have a community form of living. That particular community is called as tribe. So, a tribe who is living in one territory and who follow one culture is called as tribe nation. And if that particular territory having a political system and which is sovereign political system, it is called as tribe nation state. So, but nowadays we don't have nations. Nation means what? In the territory, if the people are following only one culture, it is called as nation. If the people are following multiple cultures, it is not called as nation. It should not be called as nation. But state means one particular territory. If they follow one particular political system, it is called as nation. So, once upon a time, every tribe is a nation state, but now every tribe is not a nation state. But however, earlier Bedouin tribal community of Saudi Arabia is a nation state, a proper example of nation state. So, you will write about tribe definition, you will write about nation definition, you write about state definition, then you write about whether tribe a nation state. Yes, earlier tribe is a nation state. Then you will compare the tribes of India with Australia, with Africa, with USA, with Russia, and you write comparatively China also. It is there in our notes which I gave you. Tribe and nation. Throw the light on the issues related to ethnicity and the issue of national integration in India with suitable examples. Yes, ethnicity. Ethnicity concept definition is given by Sumner. The definition is also given by Frederick Barth. Frederick Barth and Sumner, these are the two people who gave the definition of ethnicity. What is ethnicity? A we feeling because of a common criteria and historical connections and same blood connectivity is called as ethnicity. Like a tribe is the best example. Ethnic community, tribe is ethnic community. They live in one particular territory. They have an association. Historical connections will be there. They are called as blood ties. So, because of that, for example, Naga tribal community, they tell that we are earlier kingdom. In British times, British had added to British India. If not, we are not part of India. If not, we are not part of India. Then after independence, why I should stay with India? I want to have my own country. Why? Because my ethnicity and your ethnicity is different. Why? See my racial features, see your racial features. Naga of Northeast India. My racial features is Mongoloid and your racial feature is Dravidian. How we both can stay together in one country? So, we want a separate country called as Greater Nagalim. In the same way, Punjabis, we are Punjabis, you are Indians. My ethnicity and your ethnicity is different. Our culture and your culture is different. My way of living and your way of living is different. Why I should stay within India? I want to have my own country called as Khalistan. Punjabi Subha. So, the ethnicity is a very bigger problem. It creates disintegration from the country. It impacts the sovereignty, it impacts the integrity of the country. It impacts the sovereignty, it impacts the integrity of the country. So, with these examples, you can tell. If ethnicity, like there is ethnic problems like Kukis versus Nagas or Mesos versus Kukis, Paitis versus Nagas, if this ethnic feeling, if we don't remove, it will affect the psychological existence of the community will be impacted. This is all you have to write about. Discuss the impact of Hinduism and Christianity on the status of tribal women in India. Tribal women in India, Hinduism here, Christianity here. Tribal women, for example, I will tell you. In central India, Chenchu woman is there, Chenchu tribal community of Nallamalla forest of Andhra Pradesh. On the borders of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, Chenchus. They follow monogamy. The woman is free to choose her partner while doing marriage, while giving divorce and getting remarriage. They follow serial monogamy. At one particular point of time, one husband will be there. So, if she likes, she marries. If she don't like, she will give divorce and she will do another remarriage. But once they came into contact with the Hinduism, the status of the woman reduced. Woman doesn't have the role, woman doesn't have the power to choose her partner, to give divorce or to remarry. The status of the woman was been reduced. And in Hinduism, the menstruating woman is treated as impure. The same thing is also entered into the tribal communities like Karya tribal community of central India. The menstruating woman is treated as impure, which is not the case earlier. Her social status decreased, her value decreased. Youth dormitories, men and women used to stay together in Orans by the youth dormitory called as Dumkuria, in Gons by the name called as Gotul. Not in a wrong way, just they used to stay together for the protection of the community of the Oran and Gond. But when they came into contact with Hinduism, what boys and girls are staying together? No, you should not stay together in one dormitory. Go and be some. So their cultural systems got impacted. The cultural systems got impacted because of the impact of Hinduism. Christianity impact. Tribal women. Christianity gave education. Christianity gave good health. So the number of deaths which were been happening at the time of deliveries because of absence of institutional deliveries at earlier times, because of Christianity, health conditions improved. The health of the woman has been increased. The status of the woman has been increased. Why? Because she is getting educated. Our age-old customs just has been changed. Like Waipai tribal community, Hamar tribe, they used to have a view within their community, but now they have the view of world view. But however, the negatives which are present in the Christianity, like woman is a commodity, is entered into tribal communities also. So both positives and negatives you have to mention in this particular discuss the impact of Hinduism and Christianity on the status of tribal women in central India. Elaborate on how anthropological knowledge and methods are useful in planning for tribal development. So, how role of the topic is present in 9.2, role of anthropology in tribal development, role of anthropology in rural development, role of anthropology in policy making. So, how the role of anthropology is helpful in tribal development. What are the tools and techniques present in anthropology is helping. For example, participant observation is present in anthropology, which tells us go and participate with the tribal people, you will understand what they want. From their point of view, you have to understand, which is called as emic view, but not ethic view. Anthropology told us, go and do field work. Field works are very important. So we learned field works, we learned ethic and emic view, we learned participant observation method. From where? From anthropology we learned. We learned from anthropology. So it is helping in tribal development, it is helping in participation, it is helping in growing, it is helping in evolving. Hemmendorf, Gond tribal community, he participated with them, he provided education, health, very relevant, participated in Northeast India anthropologist who is responsible for devising Panchashil doctrine. LP Vidyarthi, anthropologist who is responsible for tribal subplan. So how the anthropologists are helping in tribal development. So anthropology helping tribal development comes under the subdiscipline called as action anthropology or applied anthropology. Yes, what is the role of anthropology? How anthropology is helping in rural development, how anthropology is helping in tribal development, how anthropology is helping in policy making, how anthropology is helping in policy implementation. That is important. No, when you take anthropology as your option, application is important. Application point of question I asked you. Write a note on the role of NGOs in promoting health and education in the tribal belt of India, that to special reference for Northeastern. Who are NGOs? NGOs, voluntary organizations, civil society organizations. NGOs, voluntary organizations, civil society organizations. In ancient India also, the voluntary organizations were being there by the name called as rishis, saints. They used to help the tribal people by giving them health and food sometimes. In present also, NGOs are helping the tribal community in providing them education, health. There are tribal community, there are NGOs like Samata NGO, Adimajati Seva Sangh, Friends of Tribes. This tribal communities, this NGOs are helping this tribal communities. So you will mention about the NGO, you will explain about the examples of NGO, characteristics of NGO, positives of NGO, negatives of NGOs are also there. What is the positives of NGO? Where the elite bureaucrat cannot go, the NGOs can go. The NGOs work because of the interest, so their participation in welfare and development will be more when compared to government employees. Negatives. Every NGO have this disease which is called as no proper accounts, no proper accounting, no proper accountability is the problem which is present with tribal communities. So, write a note on the role of NGOs in promoting health and education in the tribal belt of India, that to special reference for northeastern India. So, the famous NGO which is working for northeastern India is Christian Missionary. Christian Missionary is a northeastern states. In central India, Ramakrishna Mission is also an NGO. But the Christian Missionary has provided education, health, let it might be a religious group, but it provided education and health. So, that example in the notes I provided you two case studies, Vaipai and Hamar, the both you can write. Vaipai tribal community and Hamar tribal community case studies you can write in this particular answer. And now at 7 o'clock you will have one-to-one session on Zoom. You can send me all your answer script. I will be discussing one-to-one, evaluation completed, month test. So, we will have one-to-one discussion also. So, everyone come on to one-to-one discussion. We will have direct discussion as well. Okay? Okay, Teja, any doubts?